Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Pre-orders are now available for War of the Spark and Modern Horizons booster boxes. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and it is the second day of War of the Spark preview cards. We're going to recap and analyze everything that came out over the last 24 hours or so. A lot of cards to look at. I want to get into it quick. Real fast, though, if you check out the description below, you will find the sources for these cards. Anything that did not come directly from Wizards of the Coast, if it came through a content creator and you want to find out which creators had which preview cards, you can find all that information out down there. With that being said, let's get into it. We got to look at packaging today, so we'll go over that briefly. We see the booster box there on the right side and the left side of the bundle. They're featuring Liliana and Nicol Bolas. Also, there's a photograph of one of the dice that you could get in the bundle pack. Here's your booster pack art, Liliana, Gideon, and Teferi. Here's the Planeswalker decks, and even though we can't see the Planeswalkers, we now know it's going to be Gideon and Jace. There's your pre-release kit on the right side, and also the theme booster packs on the left. Yesterday, Wizards was a little bit late posting the zombie army tokens, so we didn't get it in the video, but here they are in case you're curious as to what they look like. If you want to learn more about these tokens or the amass mechanic, check out yesterday's video. I'll link it at the end of this one. We got to look at the rest of the promo cards today. Now, some of those promo cards we talked about yesterday because we got to look at their regular variants, and this is one of those examples, Bolas' Citadel. I won't go into all the details today since we just talked about the card, but this is the Draft Weekend promo copy of it. And here's another card we talked about yesterday, Time Wipe. They're doing a Planeswalker Weekend, and this is a Planeswalker Weekend promo card. No details yet as to exactly how to get this card other than going to the Planeswalker Weekend at your local game store and participating in events. And this one is a Friday Night Magic promo, but it is a card we already knew about due to a leak. So again, I won't go into the details around this card, but it is Augur Bolas. This is our first look at that new art, though. Teferi Time Raveler now has been confirmed as well, another card that was leaked. We talked about this one yesterday, but here is the official version from Wizards of the Coast. Now it's time to move on to the true new cards that we haven't talked about prior. Gideons Triumph. I like this card a lot, actually. It costs 2 instant speed. It's quick. It's a white edict effect. Even if I don't have another Gideon in play and I'm only getting one creature with this, that's good enough for the 2 mana, I think. If I have a Gideon, well, bonus, that's even better. And it is an edict type effect for a white. Now, because it is in white, you can't just use it whenever you want. It has to be under certain circumstances. That's pretty normal. But I do like the fact that this narrows down the field a little bit and makes your opponent choose between creatures that are attacking or blocking. And that does make the decision maybe at times a little bit more difficult, and this card may be a little more punishing. Now, I actually think this might see a little standard play because it is cheap and it is fast. And also, you might even see this eventually one day in Modern. I've been talking about Gideon Tribal for a long time. I feel like the pieces are not quite there, and I don't think this card is going to push that deck into Modern or anything like that. But as time goes on and we keep getting cards like this and new Gideon Planeswalkers, eventually it's almost inevitable that it gets there. This could be just another brick in that wall. Alright, Rising Populace. This one is alright for limited. It's nothing crazy here. A 2/2 for 3. Not really thrilled with those stats. Whenever another creature or Planeswalker you control dies, you do get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Remains to be seen what Aristocrat strategies are going to look like within this limited environment. It does feel like there's Aristocrat strategy still within the limited game, perhaps maybe not as deep as the previous set, but you might be able to put something together in draft. If that's the case, this card might be a little bit better in some builds. Might not always make your cut, though. Teo the Shield Mage. This is actually kind of good against red decks. Now, if I play this out of my sideboard and I'm up against a burn strategy, I don't really care about the -2 here. I basically just want to have hexproof for as long as possible. However, if I am playing against maybe some smaller creatures and it's a red aggro deck that's pushing on the ground, then perhaps a wall or two here or there might not be bad either. Many times, though, I think you'll be happy running this out of the sideboard and just taking the hexproof. I think this could see some standard sideboard play. Also, if you're a Commander Pillow Fort player, you might like this card. Teo's Light Shield, 0/3 wall, so it is on theme. When it enters the battlefield, though, you're getting an extra +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. That could include this one. So, 1/4 power toughness on the battlefield for 3 mana. Yeah, in limited, it might be okay. Again, you don't want this for every build, but if you're up against an aggressive deck, you might want to side it in. Or if your deck is going to have a slow start and you're trying to be a little more methodical and controlling, maybe you're in Azorius colors or something like that, it might be playable in the main. The Wanderer, the mystery planeswalker. Notice it says legendary planeswalker. There's no name attached there in the subtype. This was previewed today by Tolarian Community College, and his videos are awesome all the time when he previews cards, so check it out regardless. But at the end of the video, he actually reads the bio from Wizards on this character. It is really cool. What about the card? Is the card any good? Yeah, it's not bad. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control, so that could be coming from your opponent, which most of the time it would be. But occasionally there might be something that's damaging you that you control, so that's kind of interesting. Also, you get 5 loyalty out of the 4 mana that you're putting into it, and the -2 if you need to deal with a large creature, and it actually exiles that creature as well. This is another card I wouldn't be shocked to see show up in standard sideboards. Wanderer's Strike. This is a good card for Drafter Sealed. I'll play this any day. It's a great common. You might be able to pick it up maybe if you're lucky towards the middle of the pack, but I do think these will go relatively early, being removal. It costs 5, it's sorcery speed, it's not super fast or super cheap, but it gets the job done. Exile target creature, and then you even get to proliferate, which definitely could have an impact. It's also spot on again when it comes to theming for the character. Crush Descent. Alright, this isn't something you necessarily want to play in standard. It's a counterspell that costs 4, and it's not a flat-out counterspell. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2, so why does this cost so much? Well, because it also has a mass 2 attached to it. I don't know, I'm not sold on a mass. I don't like putting all my eggs in one basket, especially when that one basket is a token. Not only can it be removed through conventional methods, but a bounce spell or flicker spell can get it too. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that. So I could definitely see in Sealed or Draft where a mass could definitely start to take over a game if your opponent doesn't have an answer. And if you have a lot of other cards that are doing other things while you're building this mass army, well, maybe it's okay. But something like this might not always make my cut in Draft or Sealed. It just depends on what kind of deck I end up running. I might try it out in Pauper though. Erratic Visionary. Here's a card I love to hate. I love looting. Love it. It's awesome. Play Draft, play Sealed, you're going to love this card ultimately at the end of the day. But you have to pay 2 and tap to get the loot? Yikes. Alright, you do get a little extra toughness, and sometimes blue does appreciate that, especially if you're up against a more aggressive build and you're trying to kind of get your strategy in place. So that's not the worst thing in the world. It's definitely still a high pick common for me in a draft, but I'm going to hate to pay the blue 1 and tap the loot. Kiora's Dam Breaker. Okay, this is a fine draft or sealed card if you just need something big towards the top end of your curve. It's splashable. The proliferate will definitely matter some of the time as well. It doesn't have evasion or anything. Sometimes you're just simply going to have better cards if you're talking about high-end stuff, but if you don't, it's there for you. I don't hate this card for limited. Naga Eternal. Now this card I just hate. A 3/2 for 3. You know I'm not a big fan of these. This is a zombie, so maybe there'll be some relevance as we see more cards in the set, but as it stands right now, I don't want to play this thing in Draft or Sealed if I can avoid it. If I need a playable, okay, I guess so, but I don't want to play a 3-drop that's going to trade with a lot of 2-drops. It's just not where I want to be when it comes to my economy. Teferi's Time Twist. This is the common that coincides with Teferi. It's an interesting one, actually. It's really cheap. Instant speed costs 2. You get to exile target permanent you control, so it can be any permanent. Good way to protect something if it's being targeted, or maybe it just has a nice enters the battlefield effect you'd like to repeat. You return the card to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. Then if it was a creature, it will come back with a +1/+1 counter on it. So I'm thinking about some of the things we saw in the previous set, like Incubation Druid or something like that. Is it good enough to be a utility card in Standard alongside cards like that? Maybe it's a long shot, but I'd at least want to try it out and see what happens. In Draft or Sealed, it's almost always good to have a flicker effect if you can work one into your deck. Granted, you can't target anything that doesn't belong to you with this particular one, but I think it still could be very good at times. Gabrielles Rogue Shadow Mage. Okay, this one comes in with 3 loyalty. That is a little bit sparse compared to a lot of the other, even uncommon planeswalkers we have been seeing, and that's a little disappointing. I like the character a lot, and I feel like it's really cool that they got him on a card, and I love the lore around him, but I don't know, the card leaves me wanting a little bit more. Only costs 3, and it's an uncommon, so you do have to adjust expectations a little bit, and I'm sure that ability target player discards a card could become oppressive if it happened again and again and again and again after many turns. So I kind of understand why they had to temper this a little bit considering the casting cost and all, but I don't know, I just wanted something else. So what can you do with this card? Where could it possibly maybe be good? Well, here's the deal. If you're trying to put a little pressure on your opponent and you're maybe in an aggressive build and that damage is going to matter occasionally, I don't know, maybe I try this out in a Rakdos aggro deck, but I'm not really feeling it for Standard, honestly. What I feel like is this is not going to be good against certain matchups, like Esper Control, for example. And then if I am in a matchup where it's decent, I have to be in a situation where I'm going to go ahead and side it in. My opponent can still kind of hang on to cards they don't want to play, like lands or something, and that can mitigate some of the damage here. And I can't really keep the pressure on for long with just one copy of this card, and how many copies do I want to put in my deck, right? So I will say this, though, you can target any player with that discard ability, so that can be yourself. Maybe there's going to be some more reanimation themes that come in this set. We have some good reanimation cards already in the standard format, the deck just never got there. If this card does anything, it's probably because that deck finally comes together. Gabrielles Shadow, this is more of a limited card. Again, it can target any player though, so if you need to discard something for some reason, you can hit yourself and just lose the 2 life. That's a possibility. Or you're just going to use it on your opponent. That's probably what will happen most of the time. And it's not for every limited deck. Drafter Sealed, if I'm in a more controlling deck, a more methodical deck, I might run a copy or 2 of this. But if I'm in a more aggressive deck, then I'm going to pass it and try to get something that's going to put more pressure on my opponent quickly on the battlefield. When you do want a card like this, it's at common, it will be available to you, so that's kind of nice. Kaya's Ghost Form. I actually like this card for certain builds in Drafter Sealed. I don't know if I'm going to use it all the time, but here's where I think it could excel. Just throw this on a Planeswalker, use the minus ability a bunch of times, get that Planeswalker back. You only paid 1 mana to do that. Not bad. Gives you some advantage for a little resource. Or you could put this on your big bomb win condition creature, try to protect it a little bit. Again, it doesn't cost you all that much. And I like the fact that if the Planeswalker or the creature gets exiled even, it can still come back. That's kind of cool. And again, definitely on point when it comes to the theming with the character. This might also work if you have a lot of sacrifice for benefit effects going on, aristocrat style effects. Again, it does appear that that is a thing in this set as well. Ultimately, I don't necessarily see it doing a whole lot in Standard, but many of my Drafter Sealed builds might want one of these. Liliana's Triumph. This is a pretty sweet open house promo card here, actually. So, for a black and 1, instant speed, each opponent sacrifices a creature. You get an edict effect. It hits everybody if you're playing multiplayer. Very nice. Doesn't cost you all that much. It's quick. And if you control a Liliana Planeswalker, then each opponent also discards a card. Well, that's nice. If I don't have the Liliana, though, I'm still happy to pay this. This will see Standard play. It's strong enough even if you're not using Liliana. Next, we have a card that comes to us from a Portuguese language preview. It is On-Crop Invader, and this is a good limited card. Actually, it's probably more than a good limited common. I could try to pick this up maybe in the middle of the pack and be real happy with it. 2/2 for 3. Okay, we're off to a slow start. But on my turn, it will have first strike, so I can get aggressive and attack in. And I really like the ability here. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature, it gets +2/+0 till end of turn. When I am being aggressive, if I sacrifice 1 creature, now this thing is a 4/2 first striker, and remember, you don't have to do it right away. You can do it in combat, so you can just simply threaten to do this. If I attack my opponent, they got some decisions to make. As long as I have a creature and mana open, this thing could be a 4/2 first striker. Do they want to take that damage? Do they want to block it, maybe lose their creature? It just makes combat more difficult. Also notice, as long as you have creatures to pump into this thing, you can keep driving that power up for the turn. That almost guarantees that they have to block it in certain circumstances. Now, it is very dependent on board state. Because of that, I don't see it crossing over into Standard, but a very solid card for Drafter Sealed. Burning Prophet. Now, this one I think might see Standard play. First off, it's a wizard. You always like that for Wizard's Lightning and such in red. But imagine playing this in an aggressive deck with Experimental Frenzy. The Scry could push lands out of the way for you. It only costs 2 to get it on the battlefield. It will grow, at least power-wise, too, when you're going off. All very good things for a mono-red aggro deck in Standard. This is a common to watch. Honor the God Pharaoh, basically a tormenting voice that costs 1 more, but you get to amass 1. Yeah, it might be fine for you in limited. Nothing I'm super crazy about outside of Drafter Sealed, though. Samut Sprint, another card that's going to be fine for limited, although honestly, this might not always make my cuts. If I have other things like stronger removal, burn spells or something, I might pass this one up a lot of the time. But giving a creature +2/+1 instant speed, it's a nice little combat trick if you're trying to be defensive, but it also gives haste if you're trying to be offensive, plus you get to scry 1 and it only costs 1 mana. This one is a Chinese simplified language preview, and we have a recent printing of the card over on the left side. It's an old favorite dating back originally to Alpha Beta Unlimited, and it is Giant Growth. This is just a solid card, don't have a lot to say about it. You know what it does. It's pretty awesome usually in limited. It's cheap, it has a big impact, and sometimes, depending on the environment, this card can make an impact in Standard. Also, I gotta mention that art is amazing. Jungyangu Wildcrafter, another uncommon planeswalker here, and a pretty good one again. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has tap, add 1 mana of any color, and the -1 ability will put +1/+1 counters on target creatures. So you're able to, if you don't have a creature already with a counter, hopefully get some utilization out of that first ability. This actually could work maybe in Sultai midrange or Golgari midrange. I could see this as being part of the Explore package. At some point, you gotta question, what are you going to take out of the Explore package? But we keep getting good cards that could make those decks better, or at least keep them competitive. This is one that I think does see standard play. Vivien, Champion of the Wilds. Alright, I actually like this one a lot. 3 casting costs, 4 loyalty, a lot of options here. That first effect, you may cast creatures as though they had flash. That alone has got me interested. The -2 lets me dig for creatures and kind of put them off to the side, and again, I can play them later, with flash perhaps, and that's pretty sweet. The +1 could come in handy under certain circumstances as well. This will be great with Wilderness Reclamation. I could see trying this out in either Simic or Sultai midrange and standard. Viviens Arkbow, another rare that I actually like quite a bit. This only costs 2, it's nice and cheap. Now, to use the ability, sure, you have to tap it, pay X, discard a card, so there are some resources going into this thing, but it is a repeatable effect, and I like that a lot. Also, discarding a card doesn't always have to be a drawback. Sometimes there's ways to mitigate that. At the end of the day, especially as the game goes on, it's going to let you dig for creatures when you need them and put them right into play. I would play this with Wilderness Reclamation and maybe an Explore package and try it out in Standard. I think it could be good. Viviennes Grizzly. Okay, this is more of a draft or sealed card again, but I actually like it quite a bit. A 2/3 for 3, those are fine stats. The activation ability at first feels a little high, a green and 3, and there is a decent probability you could miss with this. But if you do miss, it's still moving you through your deck, and you know what? It is a mana sink, so later in the game you might be able to do this twice a turn or something like that. It is definitely there to help you dig for what you need to win the game. Ernest A, another Portuguese language card. You know how I feel about these cards that give you options. I love them, and this one's super cheap too, a black and a red to cast. This is going to see standard play. It's giving you a lot of versatility, and this is one of those cards you're probably pretty safe main decking if you want to try that out, because okay, you might not always run into an artifact, and you might not always run into a creature, but you know you're going to run into artifact, creature, or planeswalker at some point in a game. This is very cheap. It's not an instant granted, but I'm okay with that because of the versatility. Yeah, I would definitely try this out in a Rakdos midrange deck or something like that. Tobins Veto. This is the Friday Night Magic promo, and this is a pretty sweet card too. I can see myself playing this a lot in Standard going forward if I'm into control. It's a negate that can't be countered. Okay, instead of paying a blue and 1, I have to pay a blue and white though, so yes, it's a little more restrictive, but in this environment, I'm not too concerned about that. I have the Shock Lands, Hallowed Fountain, I even have Glacial Fortress I can use with this. Yeah, I think most of the time now, if you have a deck with negates, you're going to switch them out for this. Cruel Celebrant. Okay, Mardu Aristocrats didn't quite get there last time. Can they get there this time? Well, they are getting more tools, and this is a decent one. So if that deck can get off the ground, I do think this might see standard play. Other than that, this does feel like another one of those cards that could be strong in the right limited build, especially in draft. Angrath, Captain of Chaos. This is another Portuguese language preview card, and this is pretty interesting maybe for a Rakdos aggro build. It puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. Giving your creatures menace, that's kind of nice. But the amass ability here, which I know I said I'm not super crazy about when it comes to standard, I think is decent here because look at it this way. For 4 mana, all my stuff has menace and I get a 2/2 token out of the deal. Not bad. If this thing survives and I need to, that token might even become a 4/4 later. Or if the token dies, I can get another 2/2. Just a lot of ways to keep the pressure on here. Kaya, Bane of the Dead. Okay, this is a card that at first you feel like, ooh, yikes, it costs 6. This feels a little expensive. But then when I read the card, I think to myself, you know what? I could see myself putting this in a sideboard to deal with maybe a Carnage Tyrant or a Shalai Voice of the Plenty. As long as cards like that exist in Standard, I think this might see a little bit of play out of the sideboard. Not a lot, but just a little bit. I haven't even mentioned yet the -3 ability that lets you exile target creature. That's pretty sweet too. Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner. This might be my favorite card of the day. I feel like there's a lot you can do with this. It's really cheap here this time, only 3 mana, still has 7 loyalty though, which is pretty big. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card. So hopefully as the game goes on, you'll get some big creatures out, and not only will this replace itself, but it will also just go ahead and give you card advantage over time as long as it can survive. But the other thing to keep in mind is look at that -1 ability, untap target permanent. There's a lot of things you could do with that. I mean, sure, you could just untap a land and get some value that way, or you might be able to untap an Incubation Druid that has a counter on it, or maybe a land that has something like Gift of Paradise or New Horizons attached to it. Maybe you're just untapping a permanent that has a good tap effect on it and you're getting extra value that way. Maybe you're giving a creature quasi-vigilance. I love the versatility here. I love the potential card draw here. This sees standard play and has potential to show up in more than one build. Samut Tyrant Smasher. Okay, this one isn't really amazing for me. Again, you get some decent loyalty here with 5 for 4 mana. Creatures you control have haste. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. But I feel like in a world where Rhythm of the Wild exists, I don't know if I'm playing this. That -1 ability is kind of nice because of the Scry 1 and the power and toughness boost. There's nothing wrong with that at the end of the day for sure. Also, it has that built-in redundancy like we saw yesterday with Jace, so if this dies, the creature will still have haste until end of turn. Still not enough, though, to get me to play this over Rhythm of the Wild. Karns Bastion. Now, this one happens to be another one of those Planeswalker Weekend promos. This is another sweet card, though. Basically, I could see a number of different uses for this with Proliferate. I mean, it's a reoccurring Proliferate effect. It costs you a little mana to do it, but you can do this multiple times over the course of a game, and that could be very good depending on your board state. Now, its power is a little dependent on board state, but again, it can still tap for colorless mana if you needed to as well. So what can you do with this in Standard? Well, first I would start with Wilderness Reclamation and kind of take it from there. Maybe I could put this in a Super Friends build, for example. Maybe I could try to make Simic Ascendancy work. That would be kind of sweet if we got enough tools in this set to push that deck a little harder. Band Control might be a thing with Reclamation, Teferi, Krasis, maybe Nexus of Fate. I think this is a card you're going to see in multiple places going forward in Standard. And if you're a Commander player, you're also going to be interested in this. There's a lot of different builds where this could be very good. All right, with that being said, that is what we have for preview cards today. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to do the same thing. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon and have a great day.